this week on Sea Camp Extra Credit, we're talking about coral. What is it? What are some problems it faces? And how can you help it redevelop and flourish in the wild? So stay tuned.
Did you know that coral reefs are considered the rainforest of the sea?
So some fun facts to get us started about coral. Did you know coral is actually alive? It's an animal. It's a very tiny organism that lives inside a larger calcium carbonate skeleton which it creates, which is why it often can look like rocks. But it cultivates its own algae like a little garden and gains a lot of its energy from photosynthesis, just like the plants we have here on land. So it's kind of an animal, and it's kind of a plant, and it's kind of a rock, but it is at its core an animal. Coral in Hawaii comes in many shapes and forms, right? They can be different all over the world, but here in Hawaii we have a lot of common hard corals. Most commonly we have cauliflower coral.
Did you know that coral is made up of tiny single animals called polyps? They look like tiny anemones with tentacles that catch tiny pieces of food.
So some problems facing coral today, particularly cauliflower coral, for example, here in Hawaii, is that they are actually very close to being listed as endangered. They grow very, very slowly, which means that they are very, very sensitive and susceptible to any changes that might be occurring in the water or the climate around them. So coral needs a lot of light for its algae to photosynthesize. So when we have dirty water or mucked up, polluted water, this is one of the main problems facing most corals, as well as corals here in Hawaii. Reefs here in Hawaii face not only local threats like runoff and sediment pollution in their water, but also global threats like the change in climate as well as the change in water temperature. Now, to tell us a little bit more about the watershed and how water runoff works here in Hawaii, let's head over to my friend Allie, where she's going to show you a really cool experiment she does. Take it away, Allie.
All right, everybody, welcome to our watershed experiment. So here I've built the big island out of rocks in this plastic Tupperware. I filled it with some water, and that's our ocean. So the Pacific Ocean surrounds the big island. I've created a little coral reef here on the leeward side, just like our Kona coast here in Hawaii, covered with beautiful, healthy coral. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about what a watershed is and explain runoff to you guys. So normally, the island, the rocks, and the sediment and the soils can filter out any pollutants after it rains before it gets to the ocean. But when we start building towns and homes and parking lots, that water from the rain sheds off the island and into our local streams and eventually into the ocean. Streams, rivers, things like that, they can either run into a lake or an ocean depending on where you live. And here in Kona, our watershed drains into the ocean. So I'm going to show you guys what happens when some of the pollutants, like oil maybe from your car dripping, enter our watershed, and we have some pollutants. Maybe it's dog poop you forgot to pick up or any other litter that makes it onto the ground. So that way when it rains, all these contaminate our storm drains and could eventually end up in the ocean. So I'm gonna put some food coloring here. This is gonna be our fertilizer. We have some pesticides. And once it starts raining, let's see what happens to our beautiful ocean and that pristine coral reef. So as you can see, that watershed drained all of the contaminants down our streams, down our waterfalls, and can eventually end up in the ocean. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bye.
Wow, Ali, that was really cool, and what a fun experiment to show what water runoff does on the island. We actually have a second guest for you guys. We're gonna head over and talk to Jeff and Terry, and they're gonna tell us a little bit how we're conserving coral reefs here in Hawaii through a day-use mooring system. But I'll let them tell you about it. Take it away.
Aloha! We are Jeff and Terry from Jack's Diving Locker, and we are here today to talk about day-use moorings, how we got them here in the state of Hawaii, and why they are so important to protect our reef and this planet.
We all like to go out and explore the reef and look for all the cool stuff that lives out there. Fish, eels, turtles, octopus, rays, you know, all that cool stuff. 35 years ago or so, when we got our first boat, we'd go out to explore the reef, and the only way to keep the boat parked where we left it was to drop an anchor. But the problem with dropping an anchor is it's almost impossible to put an anchor and all the chain that goes with it on the bottom without that anchor or that chain breaking coral. Now, we all know that coral is actually made of thousands of tiny little animals, and it takes them a long time to grow and to build a reef. And we also know that all those cool animals we just talked about depend on the coral. They need it for hiding places, and they need it for their grazing. They feed off of the coral. They need it for a lot of different reasons. So without coral, there wouldn't be any fish. And so we had a problem. If everybody went out there and dropped anchors and chains on the coral, pretty soon there wouldn't be anything to go see. And not only do divers like us want to go see coral, but the very health of our ocean depends on it. And the planet depends on a healthy ocean. So everybody in this world that likes to breathe and eat needs a healthy ocean. So to solve this problem, we turned to science. Terry's dad was a scientist, and he did some research, and he found out there's a way to install a permanent mooring by drilling a hole in a big rock and cementing an eye bolt into the hole so that only that much is sticking out. And then anytime a boat wants to go, they just tie up to the rope and they don't have to throw the anchor anymore. So the next step was to install the moorings. First, you got to find the right spot. It should be someplace that people like to go and explore or fish and would drop an anchor. So rather than dropping an anchor, we would find a big rock that we could drill in, install the eye bolts. We'd rig them with chain and rope and a buoy. And then once the glue hardens, takes about a day, then it's time for people to go out, tie up to those moorings, and explore the reef. No more dropping anchors. And now here on our island, there's about 80 moorings. So all up and down the coast, we have moorings that we can use, and on the other islands, they have them too. Altogether, there's over 270 of these moorings in Hawaii.
Hawaii's day-use moorings are made possible by donations to the nonprofit Malamakai Foundation. To learn more or make a tax-deductible donation, go to www.malamakaifoundation.org.
Huh, that's really cool. Thanks, Terry and Jeff. And some of that footage is amazing. I'm glad we were able to share that today. Well, if you want to make sure you're not taking coral out of the ocean, but you want a cool souvenir you can take home anyway from your trip here, head on over to our craft video, where we're actually talking about how to make baking soda craft coral. So head on over there right now and see if you can make your own piece of Hawaii to take home with you. So what are some solutions or suggestions we can give you moving forward? Well, runoff is inevitable, but we can control what gets taken down into the ocean with that runoff. So some keywords you should take a look at. If you have the chance, try and buy things that are organic. This means they haven't had pesticides used on them. Also, if you can try and reduce the amount of pesticides and fertilizers that you use in your yards. Try for more natural alternatives so that that extra chemical doesn't wash down into the ocean and ultimately hurt both the coral reef as well as creatures that live on those coral reefs. Remember guys, all drains lead to the ocean.
Pop quiz. Which of these is a threat to coral? A, land runoff, B, dropping anchor, C, chemical sunscreen, D, all of the above. That's right, it's D, all of the above.
So another thing you can do to help keep chemicals out of the ocean is to make sure you're using reef-safe sunscreen, or even reusable sunscreen like a rash guard. If you want to know a fun thing you can do at home to find your reef-safe sunscreens, click right here to see our activity of this week. It's a sunscreen scavenger hunt. Head over there now. So that just about does it here from me this week. Thanks again to our guest speakers, Allie, Jeff, and Terry. Thanks for giving us your expertise and showing us some cool videos and experiments that we don't usually get to see. Join us next week on Sea Camp Extra Credit for some more cool facts and more fun activities and crafts. And as always, I leave you with the joke of the week.
What sits on the bottom of the ocean and trembles? A nervous wreck!